I'm going to take my sweet time kicking off this meeting because I hear Councillor Gabriel coming. All right, everybody. It is Tuesday, November 12th. We're here for a work session of the City Council, and we're going to begin with public comment on non-agenda items. If there's a member of the public wishing to speak to the council on any item that is not on our agenda today, go ahead and come forward in the room. Seeing none, I will close public comment, and we're going to hop into our work session, which is the report on adopted goals. City Manager, when you're ready, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Good evening, Council. How are you tonight? We have printed this report, but I didn't look at what we printed before I brought it to the clerk, and we'll hand it to you, but you probably can't read it. So you have this document on your agenda center as well, electronically, and in a format that will be easier for you to read this evening. I'm going to not go through the document and agenda center that is this Excel spreadsheet that reports on each of the goals for the year. Instead, I have a little short presentation that hits the high points of this very lengthy report, and then I plan at the end to entertain your questions if you'd like more details. So, starting off with the presentation. As you know, for this calendar year, the City Council adopted goals in January, I believe, by resolution. Next slide, please. In total, you had 5 broad categories of goals, which included infrastructure, investment and planning, economic development, collaboration with other agencies, city services and resident engagement, and environmental stewardship. 26 separate objectives organized under those 5 broad public policy areas. Of that 26, 19 of them are at 90% complete or greater. Many are at 100. Also, as you know, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither was Laramie. And our public policy goals, as established by the Council every year, contain goals that are ongoing. For instance, an example would be housing. We know we need more housing, but it will take years and years to address that issue. So you have many goals that have been ongoing for 2024 and in a number of previous years, and I expect will still continue to be public policy objectives of the city in 25 and beyond. And then you have 6 of the objectives out of the 26 that are at 50% or less, and one of your goals has really just been put on the back burner and tabled due to decisions of a different agency. So I'll talk about that a little bit as we move forward. In total, I think really great progress was made this year. I have to tell you, in bringing all of this information to you tonight, I'm very, very proud of city staff who have really outdone themselves, I think, this year in getting this work completed, in addition to all of the day-to-day operations of the city that they are responsible for. Next slide. So hitting the high points, I wanted to talk about enhancing accessibility. You had 5 goals out of those 26 that were dancing around and targeting different aspects of improving accessibility across the community. When we looked at this as a city, we wanted to make sure that accessibility in the rights of way was being optimized, as well as optimizing accessibility in city facilities, city parks, city playgrounds, in all of the city-owned and operated amenities and facilities that we provide to the community. A couple of high points under this broad category are plans. We have plans for, of course, enhancing public transportation, with the city having secured a transportation planning grant from the federal government through Wyoming Department of Transportation. In order to complete the plan, had to first reestablish the Transportation Authority, which is a function of Albany County Board of Commissioners. So we did make that request to them. They established ACTA, the Albany County Transportation Authority, and fully appointed members to that board in September. This is one of your goals that we are at less than 50% completion on, and the main reason for that is that it took a longer lead time than expected to get the Transportation Authority functional. On the city side, we've had a couple preliminary meetings with the Transportation Authority. I've hired a project manager, and we have a request for proposal that has been reviewed by ACTA individual members and by our technical experts at UW and the Epson Center, who already operate small public transportation options in the city. And we're ready to issue that request for proposal within the next, I'd say, week to 10 days, with a consultant coming on board hopefully at the end or beginning of next calendar year, and completion of the plan slated for the fall of 2025. Also under accessibility, we have established the first what I call Neighbors Helping Neighbors program. As you recall, the city asked us to find a software tool that we could use to better facilitate volunteerism in the community. And we have, as of today, 107 volunteers signed up through the volunteer software, a few more than 20, I think 22 specifically for the Snow Angels program, which is your brainchild, Council. And so we are really excited to see how the Snow Angel program pans out through our first snow season. We've had the volunteer tool, software tool that connects volunteers to people in need of assistance, and we're doing everything we can to kind of facilitate that. And of course, we partnered with the University of Wyoming, who used the same software tool, and so there's some great synergies that we can create there. We've also completed, I think completed, just waiting on the report books for the radar light, what is this, light directed AR, I can't remember what the acronym for LIDAR is, but it's a cool technology that assesses the integrity and the condition of our sidewalks. This assessment has been conducted in the field. We're waiting on the final report. What that is going to allow us to do is now have a really robust citywide view of where we can concentrate our efforts for capital improvements on sidewalks, where they're the worst, right, where they're the least accessible into the future. Staff are waiting on that final report. We will bring it to council. We think probably it'll be ready to come to council in January to review it, so you can see the data that was collected. And then we're also actively looking for some grants to help support improving those worst areas in the city where accessibility is really below standards, notably TAP grant, Transportation Improvement Program grants, which we think may be a viable source of funding. And the TAP grant also, I think, was a suggestion of council members after visiting with other elected officials through the National League of Cities and Wyoming Association of Municipalities, so we appreciate that suggestion. I'm going to close out this section by letting either Todd or Mike come up and talk to you about Laramie's first fully accessible playground, which is in progress and hoping to be a new amenity in the community soon.
Thanks, City Manager.
Well, Honorable Mayor and City Council, glad to be able to give an updated report on our first fully inclusive and accessible playground at Optimus Park. If you recall, just a few weeks ago, we accepted Land and Water Conservation Fund grant award for that project. Prior to that, to be able to get that award, there's been some community engagement on general conditions of the park. Nothing really specific on the playground pieces themselves yet, but now that we've got the grant award and we'll be moving forward with that, in early 2025, we intend on engaging with the community through a process that I like to use, kind of an internal design charrette project, where we invite community members of the disabled community, anybody that is wanting to come and provide input on what individual features, keeping in mind that we do want it to be fully accessible and inclusive, which are two different things. Inclusivity really speaks more towards going beyond what the Americans with Disabilities Act implies. So it's making sure that in our design we're not creating kind of islands of just accessible equipment that are just kind of stuck out there to make sure that we're fully, compliant with ADA, but really creating a cohesive design. So through this community engagement process, we intend on engaging and collecting that information, and then taking those ideas and with some specificity to the playground companies to then start designing the actual playground. And I'm hoping, depending on when funds are released from Land and Water Conservation Fund, that we should be able to at the very least be breaking ground by the end of the fall of next year. We may even be further along than that, again, just kind of depending on that. But we do intend on starting that community engagement piece here pretty soon after the first of the year, along with several other projects that we've got going on. So thank you for your time. Was that what you were hoping to? All right, I'll stop it right there then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have, in the slide here, you can see that QR code. That is on our website and in our public information material as well for people to scan that and learn more about the all-inclusive playground and to potentially give some feedback on that. The other thing I wanted to mention under accessibility, as you know, your goals were very multi-pronged in their approach to addressing accessibility. If folks are interested in the Helping Neighbors program and becoming a snow angel, you can go into the App Store. This is my infomercial. You can go into the App Store and look for an app called Causer, C-A-U-S-E-R. Download it and sign up to be a volunteer. Or if you're in need of assistance, you can enter an opportunity for folks who've looked for a volunteer space to come and potentially connect with you and assist you. It's like a dating app for volunteers and those in need. So that's accessibility and the 5 goals that we're trying to tackle that from many different directions. Do you have any questions for me, Council, in this highlight section?
Councilors, any questions? Please, Councilor Richardson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question regarding the playgrounds. I know we've updated a lot of the equipment on a lot of the playgrounds recently. What would it look like to think about more of that accessibility equipment as we're moving forward and update in the future? Is the cost drastically different? What sorts of things would we need to think about in terms of planning for more?
Sure. Honorable Mayor, through you. Yes, there are increased costs in the design side to create this inclusivity. But really my goal is if we're building or replacing a playground, it's going to have inclusive design elements. May not have full inclusivity because we have things to consider like parking and what's available, curb and gutter, some things that sometimes may be outside of the scope of the playground replacement itself. But at the very least, so we've got, for instance, Coughlin Pole Mountain as a playground that we're getting ready to go out to the design companies, the playground companies. With that, it's a very small playground. We don't have a lot of money for it, but I want and my goal to them is going to be as much inclusivity in those designs. It used to be that it was a lot more cost because that was kind of a fairly new thing. Nowadays, it's becoming much more the norm of creating these inclusive design elements that, again, it's a much more cohesive feel to this ADA enhancement and ADA accessibility through these really, I would say, compassionate, almost emotional type of design, because it's not just about creating swings for wheelchairs. It's creating spaces for children on the autism spectrum or creating spaces for play for those who are nonverbal. So it goes much more beyond just, again, the basics of Americans with Disabilities Act of surfacing and access and really much more into a lot more of the more modern considerations that really weren't given a lot of weight even just 3, 4, 5 years ago.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Other questions, council members? All right. Thank you, City Manager.
Thank you, and I want to thank the director for clarifying. I do realize there's a typo on this slide now where it says Laramie's first fully accessible. It should say fully inclusive, and so that's an important distinction. Thank you for making it. So moving then to the next slide, you also had two goals, although I could argue that almost every goal ties to grant seeking and maximizing our return on local dollars. But two goals in particular asked for the city for our staff to be particularly aggressive. We kind of always are. We're a scrappy city. We have to be. But council really emphasized this year that we focus on grant seeking. So there is provided attached to the paper report a detailed list of grants that have been received going into 2024 and then through the end of the year. That crosses a couple different fiscal year periods. It totals up to about $19 million over the last, say, 18 months, I'd say. And it's hard to pick a definitive point in time because we are often working on grant applications months, sometimes a year in advance of submitting them. Then we may get an award, and like you've heard from the director on the park project, once we receive an award notice, we may not actually receive those funds for many, many months if they're coming from federal and state sources. So looking over the last, say, 18 to 24 month period, we're at $19 million in grants, and they do expand local capacity, and they're going to add amenities like the park that you just heard about, also trails and non-motorized connectivity. We have a series of grants in the public safety areas supporting police, fire, and EMS functions. And then, as you know, we are particularly assertive as an organization in trying to secure grants for our utilities and our business enterprise activities. The Dallin Diversion Dam structure, as you know, is going to be almost completely funded by grants with a very, very small investment. That's an ROI. I should go calculate. That would be fun to publish. But then also, it's important to note that those grants in the water and the wastewater fund, as well as solid waste, do help us to keep our user fees low. They basically subsidize the rates that our citizens pay for water and for sewer and for solid waste services. And you heard last week about the grant that we're preparing right now for submission year end to expand, hopefully, multifamily recycling throughout the community, if we can get that grant to assist with startup costs there and remove that burden from the solid waste rate payers. Any questions on grants?
Council members, any questions?
Actually, I have one on this as well.
Please.
I appreciate all the efforts that have gone into this, and it's great to see just the amount that we're able to acquire. One question that I do have, knowing that we have a contract person to apply for all of these grants, is she also the person who does final reporting? And what kind of I shouldn't call it a burden because it's just part of it, but it can be a burden. They're a heavy lift sometimes, those final reports. What is that looking like as we are encouraging you to get more grants, but then there's also this additional work that we're putting on you as well?
Yeah, that's a great question, Councilor Richardson. So we do have a person on contract who helps us with grant research and also with grant writing. Typically, that contract does not provide for grant reporting. Staff prepare grant reports, and oftentimes that report is created across multiple departments and submitted. We also, in this past year, within this $19.1 million, we did hire an outside firm, and I believe that was a budget amendment by council to appropriate some additional money so that if we want to hire more technically focused grant preparation than just general grant writing, that we would have the resources to do that. We did use that funding that you appropriated to commission a group out of Cheyenne to resubmit a grant that we had applied for it's called Reconnecting Communities. It's a federal program. And upon resubmission and beefing up that application with that technical expertise with an outside firm from Cheyenne, we were successful in getting that grant. That contract, however, does not provide for them doing any of the reporting. Again, even with that grant, staff are preparing those reports.
Thank you, Councilor. Other questions, council members?
Comment.
Sure.
I truly appreciate everything that has went into this. I would not call this this goal 100% complete. This is something that we have to continue to do year after year. So that's just something for the new council to think about as well. For what has been done, it's been great, but I wouldn't classify it as 100%. We still have streets that need paved and sidewalks that need fixed and trails that need fixed. So that's just my comment.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions, comments? I had one question that I'm not sure there'll be a, maybe just, I can take an answer later, but on the last slide you mentioned TAP funding for some of this, sidewalk repair. And one of the hurdles we encountered before was the TAP funding has previously been used for our trail system, for funding the Greenbelt. And so one of the things I've been thinking about is exactly that. And as we have found funding in sort of the outdoor rec space that clears up this TAP funding, it gave me the question of curiosity of how much specifically to sort of outdoor rec and outdoor amenities the city has been able to invest during this council. And so I don't expect you to have an answer to that now, but I've been curious about that, starting in an ACTA meeting and some other things. So
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly that's a number we can generate. I will tell you it's substantial, the amount of funding that has been generated in the last, say, 24 months for parks and recreation and trails. There has been a lot of funding from the state. There's also been new funding from the federal government as well, and we've been really successful in that arena. So we can work on a number for you there. And Councillor Newman, to your point, I couldn't agree more. Grant seeking, as you know, for instance, last week when we were talking about the stormwater utility being propped up, our business plans for stormwater, for wastewater, and for water all incorporate projections on grant revenue for the reason I said, which is we use that to really subsidize the rate so that our ratepayers don't have to pay the full cost of service if we can pay for some of that through grants. So it's when I put that's why when I started this, I said some of these goals are 100%, but they're also ongoing because they're business activities that we have to do because of the nature of our local economy and who our ratepayers are. So we will always be doing that, particularly in the enterprise side. But as the mayor mentions, have been very successful in securing grants to prop up parks and recreation too. A lot of money out there for that.
thank you, City Manager. All right, I suppose we can move on.
Okay, so next slide. So another big area that encompassed, by my evaluation, probably 5 of your goals touched on them, is to modernize our customer service and business operations through new technology tools, right? So you've heard more than you probably want to hear about our enterprise resource planning software purchased from Tyler. It's really state-of-the-art software for municipal government operations, and it does bring forward this whole of city and smart city concept that allows us to really start performing a lot of our business and financial operations in a really modern way that we were unable to do easily with our old software tools available to us. As you recall, we implemented phase 1, which was the finance module of this software in February. Our project manager, who worked with the finance team and other members of staff to implement that and go live in February, reported that after working with, and this person works with municipal clients all across the country, that our implementation of that finance module was one of the most seamless and most successful that she has experienced. So I wanted to relay that to you. I think it's a real testament to the work that our staff did on phase 1. For most of 2024, staff have been working toward go live of phase 2, which, next slide, is the what we call EP&L implementation phase. In total, over 6,000 hours, actually. Yeah, sorry, I'm on the wrong slide, you're on the right slide, Nancy. So if you go back to the last slide, Over 6,000 hours of staff time have been invested, and here's some key statistics showing the work that staff have been doing from January until this Phase 2 EP&L module went live just last month. We had 8 core project team members. They conducted 75 sessions to understand how to best implement this software. This piece of the software, this module, was really important because it's customer-facing in a way that maybe the finance module was less customer outward-facing. So a lot of implementation sessions there. We had 10 subject matter experts participating, 4 training leads, 300 tasks were closed by the city, and those are literally 300 pieces of work that had to be completed before the go live. 12 training courses were created, and assets for video training were made. And then probably the thing that I think is most notable, because EP&L software supports builders applying for, it will be used by builders applying for building permits, developers applying, submitting site plans and things of that nature. The city did lead 25 training sessions for our end users or our customers, and then created that video library to hopefully have an ongoing resource for these folks. In the Community and Economic Development Department, they have been fine-tuning the module and the interfaces with customers since the go live last month, as has the city clerk's office with all the permits that she manages in many other areas of the city. So there are blips, and there are, what would I say, glitches that staff are continuing to work through and fine-tune this. But I think on the whole, I haven't heard anything from customers that has been very bullish, I guess, on if this is easy to use or if it's difficult or if it's not working. It seems to be working well, and we've set up the kiosks in city facilities to allow people to submit those applications digitally, electronically, now that that is the process that we're using. Next slide. As I said, I won't go into detail here, but over 6,000 hours of staff time invested between January and October, and ongoing investment of staff time on this Phase 2 module. We also in August started planning for Phase 3, which will be human resources and payroll module that will be implemented in, I believe, August of 2025 or September, right in that time frame. Any questions?
Any questions, council members?
Mayor, I briefly saw a hand from Councilor Doherty. I'm not sure if she's had something.
Okay, Councilor Doherty, did you have anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I hope you can hear me. I have no idea.
We can.
Okay, so I think it's worth mentioning for the public's edification that this software implementation has been a major deal, and that those training modules will help it so that transition, when you have staff transition, you have less time for new people to learn about the process. And also, I think it's worth mentioning that the county is going to use this software, so they're learning from the city. So it's a nice synergy. I just thought that was worth mentioning.
Thank you, Councilor. All right.
Okay.
Thank you, City Manager.
Okay, so moving out of using technology, another major area that touched a number of the goals that you established for this year is, of course, around housing. The approach that we took on this is what I would call a whole of city government approach. So really, almost every department and division of the city has been and will continue to play a role as we try to address the need for more housing and to improve the quality housing in the city. You'll recall we talked in June about standards for mobile home parks and opportunities to maybe make adjustments to municipal code in this regard. We also had a goal established by you to try to gain a better understanding of leasing practices in mobile home parks and how those leasing practices of private owners might be making housing higher quality or lower quality, more affordable or less affordable. And I know you've all heard from many residents who are experiencing changes in who owns our mobile home parks and how that is making them secure in their housing or insecure in their housing. To update you a little bit on this goal, this is one of the goals that we are below 50% on. I think I put it at 20% if I remember right. And there's a reason for that, and I wanted to explain that just briefly. So we spent the first quarter of 2024 building a survey to target renters and folks living in mobile home communities to try to understand what the leasing practices were, how they were being affected by them, and what concerns they had around rental housing and mobile home housing. When we were almost ready to launch that, beginning I think in about May of last year, we learned from Councilor Doherty, from Councilor Cumby, that there was a group working in town on housing issues, and we also learned that one of our state representatives had been building, unbeknownst to us, a survey targeted specifically at the mobile home sector. And so after some meetings and getting everyone in a room and saying who's doing what, who should continue doing what, and in what order, we determined to table our survey. It's still sitting there. It's ready to be activated if we choose to, but we determined to table it, to take a second position to the work that one of our state representatives was doing, because we recognize that when it comes to leasing in mobile home communities, the state government probably is in the right position to create legislation to deal with problems if the survey research tells us and substantiates that there are problems. So for that reason, we tabled our survey, put it on ice, wanted to let the other survey go forward, get that data, and not duplicate efforts. So we are below 50% on that for those reasons that I think are well-intentioned. I have not received the data back on the first survey that went out, and depending on the direction council wants to go, we certainly can do more work on both city standards for mobile home parks as well as working with our state representatives for maybe some reform to state law. Any questions around mobile homes?
Yeah, Vice Mayor, please.
Did we ever receive the report from the survey from Representative Provenza?
I have not, no. No member of staff has, to my knowledge.
Okay, I'll check on that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, so that's mobile homes. There was a specific goal around those issues I just discussed. More generally with respect to housing, other goals touched on things like, can we convert current vacant spaces to residential spaces? And so I wanted to share with you, we do have a concept that we've been exploring at a staff level, and we are engaging with our Community and Economic Development Department and our grant writer and with Laramie Main Street to understand what upper floor availability exists in the downtown. That's been a goal of Main Street for many years, to maybe activate some of the upper floors in the downtown area that are currently underutilized or not utilized at all for residential and or for other purposes. So we're starting a conversation around that, leading into potentially an application for fall of 25 in a program that's new but seems like it might be useful for that type of concept. We also, in my office and with Community and Economic Development, are talking about incentives to perhaps bring before the council that might allow the developers to have some front-end support on financing arterial infrastructure through city incentives. And then we've also, for the last year, talked to a number of developers who would like to work with us and possibly see if we can access the funding the Wyoming Business Council says they have for arterial infrastructure grants to, again, take that initial cost burden off the developer with the hope that that eventually flows forward to lower housing prices and maybe make housing construction occur more quickly. And then, as you know, we have implemented and we continue exploring new financing tools, methods, and public-private partnerships. Most notably, the City Council created the Urban Renewal Authority, which gives us a new financing tool through tax increment financing. We've pledged our land on North 4th Street for them as a first project for redevelopment. And right now, it looks like phase 1 of that project will yield likely 66 additional residential units once they get all the financing structured infrastructure in place and the project gets off the ground. So those are some of the things that have occurred related to all these goals this year. We've also, I should mention this, staff have been meeting regularly with a housing, community-based housing group that includes business leaders, municipal leaders, elected officials, representatives of major employers, all trying to put our head toward not only how can the city bring our whole of government effort, and then maybe couple that with a entire community-wide effort where everybody's pulling in the same direction. Because just like the city, all of our major employers are struggling with recruitment to bring people into town. If, you can create jobs, but if the jobs don't have a place to go home at night to, then you're self-limiting in some regard. Any questions there? And I had one more slide on housing, just to kind of give you some metrics similar to what we gave last year.
Vice Mayor, please.
Can I make a comment?
Please.
I was just going to make a public comment that the next meeting of the Housing Coalition is next week on the 18th, and that's going to be held at the new building of the Laramie Chamber of Business Alliance. So that is moving forward, and I think that's has the potential to be a productive group.
Yeah.
What time?
Noon. It's at noontime.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, one more slide on housing. So last year, we reported to you on what progress had been made at chipping away at the housing need identified in the city's 2015 housing study. So this is just kind of an update at the end of 24, sharing with you what has happened in 24 and what we know will happen in the upcoming, say, 12 months. The housing study 2015 identified we needed just slightly more than 4,000 housing units by 2030. Since 2015, we've added, by our best guesstimate, although it's not totally a guesstimate, but within the city limits, of course, we permit housing. We keep good statistics on that. But I do believe that 4,000 by 2030 number was a county-wide number. Yes? And so that's why I'm hedging a little bit to say we don't know everything that's happened in the county, but we do have good numbers in the city. So we've added 719 new housing units in the city since 2015. 611 are single family and 108 multifamily units. As of the end of 24, we believe we will have 81 build-ready single family lots in the market. 22 are small, 27 medium, and 32 large lots. And of course, the size of those lots is important because that can be part of what translates into affordability for different family income levels. Between 25 and 26, we do know that we have certain areas of town that will be installing infrastructure and should then be ready to start marketing and selling and building on single-family lots to the tune of 86 more lots, and also 4 multifamily lots as infrastructure comes online. As I mentioned on the last slide, with the city's pledge of land on North 4th Street for housing development, phase 1 looks like it will yield around 66 added housing units. And also, at some point in the next few years, we do have approved and awaiting the developer to final plat. So you've approved the preliminary plat. We're just waiting on the developer to bring forward final plats for another 424 single-family lots and 4 more multifamily lots. So there's a lot in the pipeline. By my best count, working with Derek, we have about 1,376, so 1,400 housing units that are online or could easily come online since 2015, ledgered against that 40,000 or 4,000, gosh, not 40,000, 40,000 by 2030 goal. And so that means that we need, between now and 2030, if that study proves true, and thus far it has, another 2,600 housing units based on what we know today to be in the pipeline. And of course, there could be things we are unaware of that could pop up tomorrow. The last thing I'll say here is I've focused here on what the city has approved and readied for development in terms of build-ready lots. I focused as well on our pledge of property at North 4th Street and the city's direct involvement in developing housing, which will be the first time we are ever going to undertake a project like that, to my knowledge. What I have not focused on, because it's not within your wheelhouse or staff's wheelhouse, is what appears to be kind of a bottleneck in the private sector, which is, for some reason, no matter how many build-ready lots we have in the community, it seems like the private sector can actually build maybe about 50 to 60 a year when we look at historical data. So we're certainly hoping, and it's been a topic of conversation with the community housing group, how can we maybe get the private sector ramped up or help them to ramp up so that they have more capacity to build in the summer than we've traditionally seen in Laramie. So, did that all make sense, or was that clear as mud? I tried to make the numbers simple, but it's a little bit of a process.
Councillor Gabriel?
Janine, I was just curious on that projection of housing units. Was that done before the university decided on the new dorm situation?
Mayor, through you, yes, Councillor Gabriel, yes. The university's most recent plan for housing was 2019, I believe, and this was 2015, yes.
Thanks, Councillor. Other questions? Okay. Thank you, City Manager.
You're welcome. So that is the end of the report on highlights. Council, you have all of the detail in this spreadsheet, both on the website along with this presentation. I've also included here the update that we received, Chief Brown received through Volunteers of America, who's providing our mental health services in partnership with Laramie PD. I know that's an important priority for the council, and so we've given you updated statistics through the end of this really first year of that program being in play. When you review this, if you have more questions, I'm happy to address them, and you know where to find me. That's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, City Manager. Councilors, any questions at the end of this presentation? I imagine there'll be some. Councilor Gabriel?
Just to comment, Mayor,
Please.
I would like to emphasize that when Janine talked about 19 of the 26, 90% or greater have been met, I think that is something to say, not only for all of our department heads and city staff. You know, we put this together, told them to go out and get some work done, and boy, they have really come through in flying colors. So I would just like to applaud city staff and city employees for getting 19 of the 26 at 90%. That's amazing.
I appreciate that, Councilor Gabriel. Yeah, I think all of the council really shares that opinion, so I'm glad you brought it up. Councilor Pierce, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just want to echo Councilor Gabriel. I really appreciate city staff, so thank you very much, city manager and city staff, for all your hard work.
Thank you, Councilor Pierce. Other comments and questions? Councilor Doherty, I imagine you have a few.
No, I accidentally raised my hand, but I echo what everybody else said. I'm so grateful to the city for following through with our goal.
Councilor Doherty, I didn't even see your hand come up and down. I just knew you had some. All right, anyone else? Vice Mayor?
I know I'm just echoing, but I just want to thank all of the staff, all of the directors. I learned very quickly as I started council that I have to be mindful of my flow of ideas sometimes because things will just start getting done. So I've really enjoyed my time working with you, and I'm just so impressed with the work we get done. We get some really heavy lifts off the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. And I think an important note, a lot done in the midst of implementing the ERP software. So I did a quick Google on it, and that is like 3 people working full-time all year to get that number of hours. So, Vice Mayor?
And coming off COVID, that this last 2 years was our recovery years from COVID, and we're still kind of recovering from that. So it's just remarkable.
Oh, that old thing. I was sort of blacked out. All right. Any other comments, Council?
Mayor, I will
Please,
pass
City Manager.
along council's appreciation to all these folks. They've worked very hard this year. Thank you.
Yeah, please, City Manager, thank you. All right. Unless anybody has any other comments, we're going to turn this over to the public. If there's any members of the public wishing to speak to the council about this work session, now's your shot. You can raise your hand on Zoom or come forward in the room. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. Council, we're going to move on to updates and council comments then, given that that is our only work session of the evening. All right. Oh, Councilor Somerville. Councilor O'Doherty, do you have any updates or comments on the evening?
Yeah, the Laramie Advisory Commission on Disabilities has 3 openings, 4 really great candidates. We're going to, Councilor Shumway and I interviewed them, and we're going to have recommendations to council next week. But the commission didn't meet last week because we weren't sure we had a quorum. So we're going to meet a little later. So no other news to report. Thank you.
No updates, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Pierce, I'm sorry, didn't have my microphone on.
No, that's okay. Just to let you know that our Ranch Advisory Group will be meeting on Thursday of this week. So we'll have an update in, 2 weeks from tonight?
That's great, thank you. I have no updates either, but I will just say one council comment. Well, I'm going to keep things in order. I'm going to save that for just a minute. Vice Mayor, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Richardson, would you like to, do you want me to mention our planning meeting or? Go for it. Okay. Councilor Richardson and I met with Director Tini and the members of the planning division, and we brought to them some of the questions and concerns from the West Side group and their historic overlay. It was a very informative meeting where Director Tini and the Planning Commission took the time to get into some of the nuances of planning and how to best answer our constituents and their concerns. So I just want to acknowledge the time that they gave us. Do you have anything to add? Or okay. And then and that was on Tuesday, November the 5th, and then on Wednesday, November the 6th, the Laramie Police Advisory Board met, and this time it was one of our training sessions, and we observed 2 videos where the issue was about use of force. We observed the video. We went through the investigation and report, and then had open discussion, and it was a very valuable learning experience to begin to see the process and at what point, if there's any physical contact, then an investigation is done. And so it doesn't have to be a huge episode if there is physical restraint. There are very clear guidelines about when an investigation is done, and it is done each time that there is a use of force. So if you handcuff and a person puts their hands behind and walks to the car, that would not be use of force. But if you have to restrain them to put the cuffs on, then that is, and it's investigated. So that was a worthwhile session, and that is it.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Councilor Newman.
No updates.
Councilor Richardson.
Just a few. DDA will be meeting next Monday, and we will have a full committee, which is great. And we are welcoming on Amy Evans, who is a downtown business and property owner. A couple updates that for upcoming. Shop Small Saturday is coming up for downtown. It is November 30th. And the first 250 people who stop by Main Street, although I think they're actually holding it at the Collective, but we'll get free bags of funness. I don't totally know what's in them, but it's going to be great. It's going to be perfect. And then the other fun event that is a joint effort, but Laramie Public Art Coalition is a part of it, is Winterfest, which is going to be a downtown festival February 15th. The street will be closed off. There will be sculptures and, again, a lot of fun. So make your way on down to those. That's it.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Gabriel.
My only update is a happy birthday to former council member, Dr. Jerry Meyer. Turned 105 recently.
Goodness.
Wow.
Good
That's
for
incredible.
Dr. Jerry.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, thank you, Counselor Gabriel. That's good to hear. We wish him the happiest of birthdays. All right, my comment, Council, and anybody else has one, you can just raise your hand. But two things. The first, I just want to acknowledge maybe the importance of the goals and how well our staff does at sort of following what we all sort of, I don't know exactly how it all comes together. Having been through it a few times, different every time, but somehow we find our way to middle ground. And put together what we think is the marching orders for a couple years. And so I think I just wanted to recognize that, staff. And then because we have future council members in the room and one on Zoom, I just wanted to note the importance of those goals for those council members, future council members, I guess. So as they are preparing for their time on the council, that they are thinking on that as well. All right. Any other comments since I offered the opportunity? Great. All right, Council, we're on to agenda review. Please don't ask me what a spectrometer is, because I have failed that quiz.
It's light.
Can you explain it, Vice Mayor? Because Councilor Shumway asked, and Brooks didn't know either. Sorry, I just called you out, Brooks. I didn't mean to do that. We were all in the same meeting today, and we all left thinking the chief knows something we don't. But all right. Okay, councilors, anything that you would like to discuss or have questions about? Other than my one caveat you're going to have to wait on.
Your Honor, a spectrometer is a vital tool for the fire department. So that's what it is.
Yes. And
Oh, you're good at this, Counselor.
I can give you one sentence.
Oh, good.
A spectrum, I just looked it up.
I did earlier.
A spectrometer is a scientific instrument used to separate and measure spectral components of a physical phenomenon. So it can be used to identify gases, it can be used to identify liquids. So you shine a light through it, and depending on the light that comes out of it, you can identify that. It's used in lab work, blood work, different things like that. So it's a way of doing analysis.
We're a good team, Vice Mayor. All right, anything on the consent agenda, folks? All right. Just so you all know, on 9P, the holidays for this year, council traditionally gives holidays, additional days off for staff outside of sort of what is normally expected. This will be the 2 days before Christmas this year because of the way it falls. The Vice Mayor and I weighed in on that and decided that maybe what was best was to give them a longer break. It gives them sort of a weekend and then all the way through Christmas. Makes it 5 days or something that they'll have off because of the weekend. So, and then they're back right after, but they get a long break during the Christmas season. So just so you all know, typically it's still just 2 days that is normal. It just is, instead of being sort of one at New Year's, one at Christmas, they get them at the same time. So, and apparently staff is okay with this. So just so you all have that for 9P. Otherwise, we're on to the regular agenda, which is all largely stuff you've seen before. All right. Any questions? All right, folks, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.